Ever wonder what happens when extraordinary talent burns too bright? What if the same uniqueness that makes someone special also puts them on a different path? The world has marveled at child prodigies throughout history, young minds with abilities far beyond their years. But not all of these incredible stories have happy endings. Number 11, Marvin Lee Aday, musical prodigy cut short. Did you know that before he became the rock legend Meat Loaf, Marvin Lee Aday was a child with extraordinary vocal talents? Growing up in Dallas, Texas in the 1950s, young Marvin showed remarkable musical abilities from the age of 10. His teachers noted his perfect pitch and vocal range that seemed impossible for a child his age. By 12, he was performing complex operatic pieces that left audiences speechless. Marvin's childhood was far from idyllic. His father, an alcoholic police officer, often disparaged his son's musical interests. Despite this, the young prodigy continued perfecting his craft, often practicing for hours after school. His middle school music teacher, Mrs. Henrietta Chapman, once remarked, "I've never heard a voice with such raw power and control in someone so young." At 15, Marvin was already being scouted by prestigious music academies when tragedy struck. During a routine school performance, young Marvin collapsed on stage. Doctors discovered a rare congenital heart condition that required immediate surgery. Though he survived, complications left him in a coma for 6 weeks. When he finally awoke, his once pristine vocal cords had been damaged during an emergency intubation. The medical setback forced young Marvin to completely rebuild his singing technique from scratch. The child opera prodigy was gone, but from this tragedy would eventually emerge the rock powerhouse known as Meat Loaf. Though he lived into adulthood, the untimely end of his prodigious classical career altered the course of music history forever. Number 10, Blanche Monnier, the brilliant mind locked away. Have you ever heard of the French academic prodigy whose life took a horrifyingly dark turn? Blanche Monnier, born in 1849 to an esteemed family in Poitiers, France, demonstrated extraordinary intellectual gifts from an early age. By the time she was 8, Blanche could recite entire works of Molière and Voltaire from memory. Her mathematical abilities were equally impressive. She could perform complex calculations faster than her tutors. Blanche's teachers predicted she would become one of France's greatest female intellectuals. At 12, she wrote a philosophical treatise that impressed even university professors. Beautiful and charming as well as brilliant, Blanche had everything going for her. However, when she turned 25, Blanche suddenly vanished from public life. Her family claimed she had gone to study abroad, but the truth was far more sinister. When Blanche fell in love with an older lawyer who her mother deemed unsuitable, Madame Monnier took drastic action. She locked her daughter in a small, unventilated room in their mansion. What started as a temporary confinement to change Blanche's mind turned into a 25-year nightmare. The once brilliant prodigy was kept in complete isolation, fed scraps, and denied basic hygiene. It wasn't until 1901 that an anonymous letter to the Attorney General led to her discovery and rescue. When authorities found her, the former prodigy was unrecognizable, emaciated, covered in food and excrement, with severe mental deterioration. Though she was freed from her prison, Blanche never recovered her brilliant mind. She spent her remaining years in psychiatric care, unable to reconnect with the intellectual gifts that had once made her extraordinary. Her prodigious potential had been cruelly extinguished decades before her actual death. Number 9, William James Sidis, the highest IQ ever measured. What happens when the world's smartest person rejects their own genius? William James Sidis could read the New York Times at 18 months old. By age 8, he had reportedly taught himself 8 languages and invented a 9th. With an estimated IQ between 250 and 300, nearly double that of Einstein, Sidis remains one of history's greatest intellectual prodigies. Born in 1898 to Ukrainian Jewish immigrants in New York, William's father was a renowned psychologist who believed in accelerated learning techniques. Young William thrived under this intense education, becoming the youngest person ever admitted to Harvard at just 11 years old. At his entrance exam, professors were stunned when he corrected their mathematics. While at Harvard, William delivered a lecture on four-dimensional bodies to the Harvard Mathematical Club that left seasoned mathematicians in awe. The press couldn't get enough of the boy wonder, following his every move. But the relentless attention and pressure took a severe toll. After graduating cum laude at 16, William gradually withdrew from public life. He rejected his genius, worked menial jobs, and fiercely protected his privacy. When journalists discovered him working as a simple adding machine operator, they published mocking articles about the failed prodigy. These humiliating exposes devastated William. Though he continued to write impressive scientific and philosophical works under pseudonyms, William lived in poverty and isolation. In 1944, at just 46 years old, his landlady found him dead in his small apartment from a cerebral hemorrhage. The man who could have revolutionized mathematics, physics, or philosophy died alone, his vast potential largely untapped. William once told a reporter, "The only way to find happiness is to conceal one's intelligence." His tragic trajectory from celebrated child genius to forgotten recluse raises profound questions about how society treats its most exceptional minds. Did we lose one of history's greatest thinkers because we couldn't let him be human first? Number 8. Philippa Schuyler, musical genius and cultural experiment. Can a child's extraordinary talent survive being treated as a racial experiment? Philippa Schuyler's life began as a social project as much as a childhood. Born in 1931 to a white mother, conservative columnist Josephine Cogdell, and black father, Harlem Renaissance writer George Schuyler, Philippa was raised on a specialized diet and intensive education as her parents attempted to prove that mixed-race children could be exceptional. Their methods seemed validated when Philippa showed astonishing musical abilities. By age 4, she had an IQ of 185 and could play complex piano pieces. At 7, she was composing music that professional orchestras performed. By 10, she was touring internationally, hailed as America's greatest musical prodigy since Mozart. Behind the accolades, Philippa's childhood was deeply complicated. Her parents documented her development meticulously, using her achievements to promote their views on race. Young Philippa was denied normal childhood activities and friendships, instead being paraded before audiences and journalists. As she entered adulthood, Philippa struggled with her racial identity in segregated America. Too light-skinned to feel at home in black communities yet excluded from white society, she eventually began presenting herself as Philippa Montero, claiming Latin heritage to escape America's racial binary. Disillusioned with her concert career, Philippa reinvented herself as an international journalist, traveling to war zones and volatile regions. It was during one such assignment in 1967, while working as a correspondent in Vietnam, that her helicopter crashed during a humanitarian mission to evacuate orphans from Da Nang. She died instantly at just 35 years old. Philippa once wrote in her diary, "I am neither proud of nor ashamed of being a hybrid, it is just a fact." Her extraordinary musical gifts, intellectual brilliance, and journalistic courage were all cut short, leaving questions about how such a multifaceted genius might have continued to evolve had she lived longer. Number 7. Vivian Maier, the secret child photography prodigy. What if one of the 20th century's greatest photographic minds remained completely unknown until after death? Vivian Maier's story begins with extraordinary childhood talent and ends with one of art history's most remarkable discoveries. Born in New York in 1926, Vivian displayed an uncanny eye for composition from the age of 8, when a family friend gave her a simple box camera. Unlike many prodigies, Vivian's gift went largely unrecognized. Her French mother and Austrian father, struggling immigrants with their own troubles, barely noticed when young Vivian began compulsively documenting her surroundings in the Bronx. Teachers occasionally remarked on her unusual photographs of street scenes and shadows, but in the 1930s, photography wasn't considered a serious artistic pursuit for children. One art teacher reportedly told Vivian's mother, "She sees things others don't, but photography isn't a real career for a girl." By 12, Vivian was developing her own film in a makeshift darkroom in the family's cramped apartment bathroom. Her childhood photographs, recently discovered, show a technical understanding and emotional depth that many professionals never achieve. Financial hardship forced Vivian to abandon formal education. Her prodigious artistic development continued in private as she worked as a nanny to support herself. For decades, she took over 150,000 photographs while caring for other people's children, never showing her work to anyone. Vivian died in 2009, alone and in poverty. Her genius might have remained forever unknown if not for a chance discovery. When a storage locker containing her negatives was auctioned for unpaid rent, a real estate agent named John Maloof purchased the contents. What he found stunned the art world, one of the most comprehensive and masterful photographic collections ever created. The child prodigy whose gift was ignored became posthumously recognized as one of history's greatest street photographers. Museums now exhibit her work internationally, yet Vivian died believing her artistic vision had no value. Though she lived to 83, her career as a recognized artist was cut tragically short by about 4 years, the time since her death until her first major exhibition. Number 6. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, musical immortality at a terrible cost. Does anyone represent child prodigy status more completely than Mozart? Yet despite living for 35 years and creating hundreds of immortal compositions, Mozart's life was tragically abbreviated. Born in 1756 in Salzburg, Wolfgang showed almost supernatural musical abilities almost from infancy. By age 3, he could play piano pieces perfectly after hearing them once. At 5, he was composing original music. By 6, he was performing for European royalty. His father Leopold, recognizing his son's extraordinary gifts, took young Wolfgang and his sister Nannerl on grueling performance tour across Europe. From 1762 to 1766, the Mozart children performed up to 5 hours daily for nobles, often while battling illness, exhaustion, and the normal developmental needs of childhood. Wolfgang's compositions grew increasingly sophisticated despite his youth. At 12, he wrote an opera that astonished the Italian musical establishment. His productivity was relentless, often composing entire symphonies in his head before committing them to paper with few corrections. The physical and emotional toll of his childhood eventually caught up with him. Years of malnutrition, stress, and constant travel during his developmental years likely contributed to his lifelong health problems. Mozart suffered from frequent illnesses throughout adulthood, including kidney problems, rheumatic fever, and possibly typhoid. In December 1791, at just 35, Mozart died after a short, intense illness. His body, swollen and discolored, was buried in an unmarked communal grave, a standard practice for Vienna's middle class at the time. Medical experts now believe Mozart's prodigious childhood directly contributed to his early death. The physical strain of constant touring, irregular meals, exposure to numerous diseases while traveling, and the psychological pressure of performing like a musical machine damaged his constitution irreparably. Though he lived to create hundreds of masterpieces, the question remains, how many more might have existed had his childhood not been sacrificed to his talent? Number 5. Évariste Galois, mathematical revolutionary. Have you ever wondered what genius looks like when it's angry? Évariste Galois was just 12 when he discovered mathematics was his calling. Born in France in 1811, young Évariste quickly outpaced his teachers, mastering university-level mathematics through self-study while still in his early teens. By 16, Galois was making groundbreaking mathematical discoveries that would eventually transform abstract algebra. His work on what we now call Galois theory provided a solution to problems that had stumped mathematicians for centuries. He essentially created a new branch of mathematics while still a teenager. Despite his extraordinary intellect, Galois faced constant rejection from the French academic establishment. The prestigious École Polytechnique denied him admission twice based on his unconventional approaches and inability to explain his innovative methods to examiners who couldn't follow his leaps of logic. Frustrated by academic rejection and inspired by France's revolutionary spirit, Galois became increasingly involved in Republican politics during the tumultuous years following the 1830 July Revolution. His political activism led to multiple arrests before his 21st birthday. The night before a duel whose exact cause remains mysterious, though likely involving either politics or a woman's honor, Galois stayed up all night frantically writing down his mathematical theories. He repeatedly scribbled, "I have no time" in the margins as he tried to preserve his unfinished work. The following morning, May 30th, 1832, Évariste Galois was shot in the abdomen during the duel. With no immediate medical attention available, he died the next day at just 20 years old. His last words to his brother were, "Don't cry, I need all my courage to die at 20." The mathematical papers he wrote during that final night transformed mathematics in the decades after his death. Fields like abstract algebra, group theory, and Galois theory now form the foundation of modern mathematics and have applications in physics, cryptography, and computer science. What other mathematical revolutions might this prodigy have sparked had he lived even a few more years? Number 4. Barbara Newhall Follett, literary prodigy who vanished. What happens when extraordinary success comes too early? Barbara Newhall Follett published her first novel, The House Without Windows, at age 12. This wasn't just any children's book, it was a sophisticated work that literary critics compared to the writings of Joseph Conrad and Robert Louis Stevenson. Born in 1914 to literary parents, Barbara began typing stories on her mother's Remington No. 7 typewriter at age 4. By 8, she had written a 4,500-word story about a cricket. Her father, Wilson Follett, a respected editor and critic, recognized his daughter's exceptional talent and cultivated it intensively. When the family's home burned down in 1926, destroying the manuscript of Barbara's first novel, the 12-year-old simply rewrote it from memory, producing an even better version. Published in 1927, the book received glowing reviews from the New York Times and other major publications. Her second novel, The Voyage of the Normandie, written at 14, further established her as a literary phenomenon. Critics marveled at her emotional depth and linguistic sophistication. One reviewer wrote, "It is difficult to believe that this book is the work of a child." Barbara's charmed life collapsed when her father abandoned the family for another woman. Financial hardship forced her to leave school and work as a secretary. Her literary career stalled as she struggled with depression and disillusionment. At 20, Barbara married, but the relationship quickly became troubled. On December 7, 1939, after an argument with her husband, 25-year-old Barbara walked out of their Boston apartment with $30 and was never seen again. No body was ever found, and her disappearance remains unsolved. The literary prodigy who once wrote, "I see visions of a high, wild country where I think I really belong," simply vanished, leaving behind only 2 published novels and a handful of unpublished manuscripts. Her extraordinary talent, which burned so brightly in childhood, was extinguished before reaching full maturity. Whether by choice or by fate remains one of literature's enduring mysteries. Number 3. Bobby Fischer, chess genius and troubled soul. What price does brilliance exact on the human mind? Bobby Fischer could explain complex chess strategies at age 6. By 13, he won what chess enthusiasts call the game of the century. At 14, he became the youngest U.S. chess champion in history. When he defeated Boris Spassky for the World Championship in 1972 at age 29, it seemed his prodigious childhood had led to a perfect culmination. Born in Chicago in 1943, Fischer's single mother noticed his intense focus and pattern recognition before he started school. She bought him a chess set when he was 6, and within days he was beating adults. His photographic memory allowed him to study chess books and memorize thousands of positions and games. Fischer's childhood was consumed by chess. He skipped classes to play at Washington Square Park in New York and eventually dropped out of high school to devote himself entirely to the game. While other children played sports or attended parties, Bobby studied chess up to 15 hours daily. This isolated childhood took a psychological toll. Fischer developed increasingly paranoid worldviews. After winning the World Championship, he retreated from public competition for nearly 20 years, living in relative obscurity and refusing million-dollar offers to compete. When Fischer returned to chess in 1992 for a rematch against Spassky in Yugoslavia, he violated U.S. sanctions against the country. Forced into exile, the former prodigy spent his remaining years as a fugitive, making increasingly erratic and antisocial statements. His brilliant mind seemed to unravel as he embraced conspiracy theories and extreme ideologies. Fischer died in 2008 in Iceland, the country that had granted him citizenship when no other nation would take him. The chess prodigy who revolutionized the game died from kidney failure at 64, alone except for a few caretakers, his genius overshadowed by decades of troubled behavior. Garry Kasparov, another chess champion, once remarked, "Fischer's chess brilliance was unmatched, but it came at the cost of his connection to reality." The question lingers, was Fischer's eventual psychological decline an inevitable consequence of his prodigious, isolated childhood? Number 2. Terence Tao, the mathematical miracle. Can a prodigy survive success? Terence Tao might be the exception to the tragic pattern. Born in Australia in 1975, Terence could perform arithmetic at age 2. By 9, he was attending university-level mathematics classes. At 13, he became the youngest gold medalist in International Mathematical Olympiad history, scoring a perfect paper. Tao's parents, both education professionals who had immigrated from Hong Kong, recognized their son's extraordinary abilities early, but were determined to protect him from exploitation. Unlike many prodigy parents, they insisted on a balanced childhood with normal social interactions alongside his accelerated academic progress. Despite graduating with his master's degree at 17, Terence maintained unusual psychological health. He earned his doctorate from Princeton at 21 and became the youngest full professor at UCLA at 24. Today, he continues groundbreaking mathematical research that spans numerous fields. The Mozart of mathematics has so far escaped the tragic fate of many prodigies because of several key factors: supportive but not exploitative parents, a personal temperament that values collaboration over competition, and a mathematical community that has evolved to better support exceptional talent. Tao's story illustrates how prodigious talent need not lead to tragedy when properly nurtured. Yet his exceptional outcome only highlights how rare such balanced development has been throughout history. Will Terence Tao continue to thrive where so many other extraordinary minds have faltered? Number 1. Alan Turing, the code-breaking prodigy. Can society's treatment of difference extinguish even the brightest minds? Alan Turing showed mathematical brilliance from his earliest school days. At 13, he was solving advanced calculus problems that baffled his teachers. By 16, he was independently studying Einstein's relativity theories and extrapolating his own interpretations. Born in London in 1912, young Alan's precise, logical thinking marked him as different from his peers. School reports noted his extraordinary ability to solve complex problems through entirely novel approaches. One headmaster wrote, "I have had clever boys, but Turing thinks differently than anyone I've ever met." While studying at Cambridge University, Turing published his paper on computable numbers at just 24. This groundbreaking work essentially invented the theoretical foundation for modern computing before physical computers even existed. During World War II, his prodigious talent was channeled into breaking the German Enigma code, likely shortening the war by years and saving millions of lives. Despite his crucial contributions to mathematics, computer science, and Britain's war effort, Turing's life met a premature and tragic end. In 1952, he was prosecuted for homosexual acts, then a criminal offense in the UK. Given a choice between prison or chemical castration, he chose the latter, submitting to estrogen injections that caused physical and psychological suffering. On June 7, 1954, Turing was found dead from cyanide poisoning at age 41. While officially ruled a suicide, some researchers dispute this conclusion. Regardless, it's clear that the British government's treatment of one of its greatest minds contributed directly to his untimely death. The mathematical prodigy who conceptualized artificial intelligence, helped defeat Nazism, and laid the groundwork for modern computing died decades before he could see his visions realized. Only in 2013 did Queen Elizabeth II grant him a posthumous pardon, acknowledging the injustice he suffered. Turing once wrote, "Sometimes it is the people know one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine." What unimagined discoveries might he have made had society embraced rather than rejected his differences? Have we learned how to better protect our brightest minds from the unique pressures that come with extraordinary talent? Or will we continue to watch as exceptional children grow into troubled adults, their brilliance burning out long before their time? When the next Mozart or Turing appears, will we know how to nurture their gifts without destroying the person who bears them?